Well, hello friends, and welcome to our next iteration of What is in Your Box this month. We're coming to you from scenic San Francisco, and I am once again joined by my good friend Allyson Gorsuch.
Hello.
She is a acclaimed wine writer. She writes our newsletter that hopefully you all are reading every single month.
Hopefully.
And she used to be a couple of fairly high-profile positions were in her repertoire. She was the wine director at a little small place called the Farmhouse Inn in Sonoma, as well as at the Beverly Hills Hotel in Los Angeles. And she now resides in St. Louis.
Back to St. Louis.
Where we're from. And as of yesterday, fresh off the plane, and we are here today to talk to you about one of the wineries that I personally truly stoked on presenting. This is Castagna Vineyard. We are in Beechworth, and we specifically wanted to make sure that we asked Allyson to sit in on this particular winery and this discussion because she spent some time in the land of Oz.
I did, yes. So I went to Australia for 6 months after you graduate from university. The Commonwealth will give you a 4-month work visa. So I graduated college in 2000, and that happened to be the Olympics in Sydney. So I took the opportunity and worked in Sydney for the Olympics. And then I traveled up the coast and spent a little under a year in a one-street town called Airlie Beach, which was, there's 2 jumping off points to the Great Barrier Reef. There's Cairns, and there's Airlie Beach, which goes through the Whitsunday Islands.
We are also going to talk a little bit about the part of the country that grows the most wine, and most of the wine production in Australia comes from a place called South Australia. Let's put a pin in that until June. But the most intriguing and the most diverse region, I would say, in the continent is actually the state of Victoria.
Right.
So in the south of Victoria, we have the city of
Melbourne.
Basically San Francisco with a warmer climate. But it is, if you drive about 4.5 hours to the north, you find yourself in one of the flattest and one of the drollest parts of the country, I would say, except for this one little kind of mountain
Enclave,
range,
if
I
you
would
will.
say. And that is...
Apparently they call it the Australian Alps.
I did not even know they had that. But it is a region that is fairly well known for a couple of producers. One of them is Giaconda, and they continuously get hailed as one of the great producers of Australia. But the lesser known secret is what is here in front of you. And these are the wines of Julian Castagna and Castagna Vineyard.
And these are brand new to me. I'm very excited. Shall we jump into the first wine?
Let's start with talking a little bit about Castagna. They are staunchly devoted to the idea that the sense of place and their farm is a closed ecosystem. Nothing goes into their wines from the vineyard that's not naturally found there. They were so passionate about it that they were noticed by one of the most famous winemakers for biodynamics in the world, a gentleman named Nicolas Joly from France, from the Loire Valley. And in 2003, Nicolas Joly founded a organization by invite only called La Renaissance des Appellations.
Thank you for pronouncing that and not making me do it.
Hey, we're going to get to the Italian part where you're going to put me to shame. And started with 23 producers. It's now well over 200, but it is by invitation only. And Castagna is just one of 4 wineries in Australia that belong to this organization. Just for comparison, the United States has 1.
Right.
The other wineries probably may have not have heard of, except for one, which is my other favorite winemaker in the entire country, I would say, and that's Vanya Cullen. So we have Cullen and Castagna. I think you're in a pretty good club. These wines are incredibly allocated. This is a wine that when we went to Melbourne in 2015 with my friend Jake and his fiancée Heather, we went and had probably the best meal of my life still at a place called Attica and this is before the Netflix documentary.
Right.
And I did not even realize this, but one of the wines that we had in the pairing was actually one of Julian Castagna's wines.
Right.
And that was a really cool thing to realize this past week, just looking through old photos. So these wines are hard to find in Australia. They're damn near impossible to get out of the country. And I had to go there in 2019 and prove to Julian that I was not a complete shithole, shitbag, whatever you want to call it. And spent the afternoon with him and Carol Ann, and luckily enough, he was generous and allowed us to represent his wines here in the United States. So let's get into Quasi Bianco.
Okay.
Quasi Bianco. What'd you call it? Somewhat white?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That seems to be the translation.
Sure. This is a wine that is not coming from Beechworth. This is the only exception, really. It's coming from a place called King Valley.
Right, which you mentioned is about, I don't know,
An hour or so away.
hour north.
Yeah.
So it's a little higher and a little cooler.
Yes.
So hence the choice of Riesling to grow in this area.
Yes, and it is one of those regions that we sometimes refer to as flashcard wines because you never see actually wines from there. And this is Riesling. Riesling in Australia is a really big thing. Technically, it is the third largest widely planted grape in the white grape in the country, but it's definitely the one I think that the Aussies favor when it comes to.
I don't know if they still do it, but when I lived there, they pretty much every bar you went to had 2 boxes of Riesling in the refrigerator, and one was off dry and one was dry.
Yeah.
And people just drank it like it was water.
Yeah, it's bloody hot there.
Yeah.
So this is what I like to say, not your pappy's Riesling. This is made with a couple of different plays. First of all, take a look at the color.
Exactly.
It is a pretty dark, deep yellow, and that is because this wine spends a good amount of time on skins. This is a wine that needs a little bit of extra help to have some texture. And specifically what we are going to do to add that texture, because it's a low alcohol wine, this is one of the warmer vintages of this particular bottling. It's 11.7% alcohol.
Right.
So they are going to sit on the skins for 30 days.
So they come, they come in, they de-stem it, and then they sit on the skins to get all this color and to get the texture. I mean, obviously Riesling is extremely high acid grape variety anyway, and then this particular vineyard is really high. So we're basically just trying to kind of tone down that acidity.
Exactly. And after the fermentation takes place in stainless steel,
Right.
they do something also very atypical. A third of it goes into a concrete egg, so that it gives a little bit of that round, creamy texture because no part of the egg is ever flat, so it's continuously moving. The other 2/3 go into old neutral wood. So this is a also great testament to the versatility of Riesling. I think that for oftentimes we think of ceviche, we think of oysters, we think of things of that nature. There is a huge Southeast Asian influence in the cuisines of Australia. I think that this is a perfect wine for anything that is Thai, Burmese, Vietnamese. It
Right.
has that really kind of like very papaya, very kind of lively tropical fruit quality. And as a result, I think that it's not just something that you can enjoy with typical Riesling things, but I even said those like sitting there thinking about like, man, baseball season started yesterday. My beloved Cardinals.
Where are we going with this?
Do you prefer ketchup or mustard on your hot dog?
Mustard and
Of
relish.
course. Perfect with mustard.
So do you remember the Hallmark dish at the Farmhouse Inn, which was rabbit, rabbit, rabbit?
Rabbit, rabbit,
And
rabbit.
it had that rich, creamy mustard sauce?
Yep. Crushing it.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, so moving on,
Moving on.
we have kind of the opposite wine here.
Yes, there's something for everyone. Next up, we have Adam's Rib. Adam's Rib, they do make a white and a red version of it. We are featuring the white. The idea is that Chardonnay is something very, very special to Julian. So special that it sells out very quickly. Like we were not able to get any. And they
Right.
all went to the various restaurants of Melbourne and other parts of Australia. So he makes Chardonnay for 3 different bottlings. He makes a Beechworth Appellation Chardonnay, he makes an Estate Chardonnay, and then whatever grapes he feels that are perfectly great in structure, but not necessarily super aromatic. They tend to go into Adam's rib. And the way that it makes it into a really well-balanced and really awesome wine is the addition of Viognier. He also does make a Viognier. It is also very highly allocated, and we were not able to get some this year. It's called Ingenue. If you're ever in Australia and you see that, buy it. It's amazing. I also think that when it comes to food and wine pairing, this wine is one of those magical crossover wines for the American consumer, because the first time I smelled this, I was like, holy God, buttered lobster would just absolutely crush with this. But then as I kept going and as I kept thinking about things that, even when I worked back in the day at Lazy Bear, we always did like a corn polenta with a generous, when I say generous, an obscene amount of butter. And I think that anything that has that kind of sweeter and a little bit of that kind of mealier, grainier quality would be an absolute just home run with this wine. We always talk about food and wine pairing needing a bridge, but the bridge doesn't need to be a 4-lane highway.
Right.
Here you have that aromatic quality, and then you're gonna say, oh my God, this is gonna intense, this is gonna blow things out of the water, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute. There's subtlety here.
Yeah, I mean, but there is this really rich viscosity, on the palate when you first drink it. But it does really finish cleanly. Like I'm still salivating right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
And for anybody that likes Chardonnay, this is just a complete home run. For anybody that likes Viognier, this is a complete home run. For anybody that's skeptical about the two grapes, try this. It will absolutely blow your mind.
I admittedly am not a Viognier fan, but that was really good wine.
One convert, searching for more out there. There is also a very Bliss-like production level to this wine. It is a whopping 2,400 bottles.
Right.
So get it while you can. And that was Adam's Rib. So,
moving into the reds, which I think was really the impetus for this project to begin with, was because he really wanted to. Well, first of all, I think it's important to note that he labels Syrah and not Shiraz, which is a comment on the style of wine. But he really wanted to make something spicy and a little less ripe, and really modeled it after Côte Rôtie, and that's where the rootstock is all from. From the 1850s or something like that.
Yeah. So if anybody is wondering why such a focus on Australia and why both of us feel like it's one of the coolest places on the planet, outside of its visual, absolute insane, gorgeous beauty. So the parts of Australia that are specifically in South Australia, kind of out there, have never been affected by this little root louse that devastated European and also American vineyards called phylloxera. It's just too far away, too distant, and the British, because Australia was a British colony until 1900, they learned a little bit of something from us Americans. That if you don't want a nation to rise up against you, maybe you shouldn't let your colonies trade with each other and form a strong economic alliance. So they did that with Australia. That's why Australia only has 5 states, and they're really big, and most of them are really empty. 95% of the population of Australia lives within 50 miles of the coast.
I thought it was 100, but I'm going with you on that. I'm sure you looked it up before.
Yeah, I sure did. There is a place called Alice Springs in the middle of nowhere that has probably half of those people that don't live near the coast. And actually Beechworth would be another place.
Right.
The idea is that if you, in the 1800s, wanted to send something from Melbourne to Adelaide, it would have to first go to London.
Oh, interesting.
And then all the way back.
Okay.
So there was no trade between these places, and so still today, one of the ways that they combat phylloxera and the spread of other diseases is if you're driving from Melbourne to Adelaide, you're going to get stopped at the border of South Australia, and they're going to search your car, and they're going to take all of your fruit, and they're going to make you dump it out, and then they're going to send you on your merry way. So phylloxera has never been a thing. So rootstock that was brought here by the Germans in the 1840s and 1850s has never seen phylloxera. It is its own completely different animal, and that is what Julian used to plant the vineyards at Castagna. The idea is that it has a very hot, dry climate, and I think that's what Sangiovese does really well in. There is something about the combination of these two unlike grapes that I've had sommeliers scoff at, and like, why would you ever do this? And then they tasted this wine, they're like, I'm gonna shut up now and drink it. And this is a wine that I've shown to multiple master sommeliers and sommeliers in general, and it has completely blown their mind because it's exactly what you don't expect. You can do this with everything from tomato pasta. I also took it to Goginara, one of my favorite hole-in-the-wall places in Mexico City, Korean barbecue.
Ooh.
Holy God, this one absolutely
I would
crushed.
imagine.
This is actually this is even good with kimchi.
Yeah, I
Go
can see
figure.
that. Because it has that really kind of Sangiovese black cherry and violet sort of prettiness and texture, but then it does bring in all that spice that you expect from Côte-Rôtie.
And we always talk about Sangiovese tasting like dirt and cherries in that order.
Right.
Except for
This
here,
is
it's the
cherries
exact
and dirt.
opposite.
Yeah, and
that's-
then all the spices, herb de Provence, all that kind of stuff as well. So really interesting wine.
Yeah, and amazing wine. And once again, a very Bliss level of production of 1,200 bottles.
And a Bliss level of geekiness.
Yes, because...
There's,
it's also, by the way, vintage is a thing, umami is a thing in wine. There's only one thing that adds umami to a wine, and that is time. So that's why we're proud to serve you the 2013 vintage,
Right.
which is about hitting its prime right now.
and it really doesn't show that age. I mean, it still drinks like a baby.
So,
There's one other thing I wanted to talk about with that, which is his decision on when to pick.
well, let's put a pin in that until we taste this one.
Okay.
So, now we come to the aptly named Genesis. The reason why Julian moved to Beechworth and started planting Syrah is to specifically make this wine. This is his largest production every single year. It's about 10,000 bottles or so, depending on the vintage. And this is a wine that, self-admittedly, I've played tricks on fellow sommeliers and said, blind taste this wine for me. And pretty much every single person that I put this wine in front of, actually no, every single person I
Really?
put this wine in front of has called it Côte-Rôtie or Hermitage. Sorry to my fellow master sommeliers that think that Australia is still a country that makes average quality wine with pictures of animals doing stuff on the label, but this is a great example of that being not true. So, Genesis.
Yes. Well, this is, we've just tasted 3 incredibly tasty and unique wines, but somehow or another, this is your favorite of the 4?
This is my favorite of the 4 vintages of Genesis that we have.
Okay.
Because we actually brought in the 16, 15, 14, and 13. This is the wine that I would say definitely has the most vintage variation because of something that you just mentioned. Let's take that pin back out and talk about when Julian decides to harvest the grapes. As a winemaker, when I asked him for things like alcohol level, acidity, residual sugar, all the nerdy stuff that's on our website, he said, oh, wait a minute, I have to export these. So I actually have to put them through a chemical analysis for Australian export.
Right.
That's why we have these numbers. He does not give a flying fuck about what is actually going on here. He does 2 things. He tastes the wines. He does measure pH, because for him that's one of the big telling signs. And then he tastes the wine, and he specifically picks the grapes when a certain flavor profile is no longer present. He's a huge proponent of not letting oak talk at all. It's only there for texture. And this wine is just that perfect, bloody, very kind of sanguine, very meaty kind of aroma. And you're going to smell it and you're like, God damn, that smells like black olives. And then you taste it. And this is where I think the beauty of Australia comes in, is because the wine is not hollow or thin, like sometimes in cold, rainy vintages you can get in lower price northern-owned French wines.
Right.
Taste the wine.
There's still with that low of alcohol, there's still a lot of glycerol here, which is really hard to achieve.
And also just a lot of purity of fruit. This wine's 9 years old, and it's just now really starting to come around.
I was gonna say, I think this is like drinking perfectly right now. I think it's at the apogee
I don't think I would disagree. I would
Really?
say it's just now hitting its stride, and it's just going to continue to get better and better.
I think that as we were just talking about, though, with different markers for different people, I'm very sensitive to older wine, and there's this spot that all wines get to where they start to kind of go, and some people love it. I just don't when they start to get into like Worcestershire.
I think that this wine has a certain like level of brightness that it can only continue to gain complexity because the fruit is in such a perfect spot right now that it can become a little bit less vibrant and more of that kind of
Just more tertiary.
Tertiary and herbaceous and all those things are going to start to come out. And truly a special wine, my favorite vintage. We have 13, 14, 15, and 16. If you want to try all 4 of them side by side, please let us know. We'll be more than happy to adapt.
That'd be a fun flight.
It is a stupidly good flight. These wines are priced exactly as they should be priced. They're not, I wouldn't say, for a lot of us, they're not Tuesday night wines, but this is
But they are one of a kind, each one of them. So.
And this is not a Tuesday night winemaker. So now for the last little piece.
We have a bonus wine.
We do have a bonus wine. Let's preface this by saying there are very few parts of the world that do this. And there are even less parts of the world that do it well. I would point to like one.
I was going to say I can only think of one, but
yeah, and
we'll discuss that later.
No offense to my friends in Italy, Lambrusco is delicious, but this is not Lambrusco. This is something that is a specialty of the Land of Oz. This is something that only exists, I believe, in this country. There's not very much of it left, even back at the winery. And this is sparkling Genesis. This is a sparkling red wine, like literally. And this is made in the exact same way as champagne. This goes through 2 fermentations. It starts with the 2015 Genesis, and then a little bit more sugar, a little bit more yeast are added. The bottle is sealed, and a second fermentation takes place inside of the bottle. That second fermentation has some byproducts. One is heat that goes out through the bottle. The other one is alcohol. So it raises it up to a whopping 13.5. And then the last one is carbon dioxide. And that's why the bubbles are still bubbly in your glass. We're going to pour our good friend, hip young sommelier behind the camera,
He's
a glass.
getting jealous, so we'll give him a little treat.
So this is a wine that is zero dosage, meaning there's no sugar left in the wine. And this was disgorged in March 2021, meaning it spent 5 years on the lees inside of the bottle. Yeah. Now, for a lot of people, that may be quite overwhelming and kind of like weird, and lots of weird shit can happen when you do that to a red wine. I think this is incredibly masterfully made. You're looking for a pairing for beef tartare or beef tartare. Either one works. This smacks it out of the park. This is also a wine that has density and complexity. It smells like the Genesis wines that we just talked about. It tastes incredibly refreshing and slightly tannic, which is really cool for a sparkling wine to do. And if you want to, if you are like me and you have some of those really snobby friends that don't think that think they know everything about wine and that they've tasted it all, this is a great wine to bring to a party, because no matter what happens, it's unmistakably delicious and it is unmistakably unique. I don't think that there's another version of sparkling red wine that I've tasted that I would look forward to retasting more than this.
Yeah, I mean, I think I haven't, I haven't had a lot of sparkling red wine, admittedly, but this is really interesting that it would spend that long, 5 years, on the lees, but it doesn't have that yeasty kind of brioche flavor, which is amazing.
That's what the red grapes take care of.
Right.
It doesn't have anything to latch onto. It just still has Syrah as the main point. This is incredibly limited. We were lucky to get 120 bottles of it. So if you would like, please get your requests in for that right away. Yeah. Olives. Oh, holy God. That's awesome. Whoa. That is so cool. All right. With that, I think we have to come to an end.
I actually brought out more of the tapenade, but almost more of like the salinity as well, which is amazing.
It's a wine that coaxes flavor out of something that's incredibly as flavorful as a big bowl of olives. Like normally the olives are the ones that kill the wine, and here the wine just absolutely crushes. So with that, just wanted to say thank you to everyone for joining us once again for this edition of What's in Your Box this month. I'm Andre, this is Allyson. Please go on to BlissWineConcierge.com, sign up for our newsletter, sign up for our wine club, or just purchase some of these delicious bottles. We'll send it to your door. And next month we'll be back with something from a little different part of the world. But for today, hello Beechworth, and goodbye from San Francisco.
Bye.
Cheers.
Cheers.